Gallery spaces in Chicago can sometimes be hard to access, but there's someone trying to change that. A very serious gallery is pushing the needle, all thanks to their founder, who's working to make the space accessible for all.
My name is Allan Weinberger. I am a gallerist here in Chicago. I'm originally from Ohio. I've been here for 15 years, and Chicago's my home.
What brought you to Chicago?
Well, I wanted to live in a big city, but I also wanted to live in the Midwest, so your options are somewhat limited.
Yeah, as a fellow Midwestern, I feel like once you get here, you kind of stay here. Do you feel that same thing?
Kind of. I mean, I think that in the art world or any entertainment and creative field, Chicago's a great place to start or grow. I mean, you can live here, but if you really want to make it, you do need to figure out ways of branching out. You know, and so I think I'll always have some type of footprint in Chicago. I think I'll always call Chicago home, but there are other
cities, other opportunities. And where are some of those places that you want to end up?
Well, I mean, New York is the
absolutely, yeah.
Miami, Los Angeles.
And what are those? What's the appeal for those places for you? Just the potential, or is it something deeper?
I think the potential. I mean, there's something about New York that every creative feels. When you go there and you realize pretty quickly that you can never be bigger than New York. And everywhere you go is really exciting and interesting and fascinating, and it's kind of like the only city that I've been to where I truly feel as though capitalism is working. You know, where other cities are like, this is not working.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you walk through New York and it is bustling, always. People are moving, people are hustling.
Yeah,
they've got the best restaurants because you can't afford to be at that restaurant.
Absolutely.
You can't afford to be mediocre in New York. You know, like if you open anything, you have to be great. And so there's something about that that's really interesting and beautiful and fascinating.
Absolutely. Is that a mentality that you carry here as well? That you have to be the best?
No. I think I have to be continually getting better. But I think that Chicago is a really great place to start a creative, like comedians can get their start here. Musicians can get a start here, artists can get a start here. It's a pretty forgiving place to perform and learn and grow. I want to be the best here, but I don't think it's a requirement.
Absolutely, yeah, I hear you on that. It's important to always grow, and at that point, you're eventually going to reach the best, but then you're still not going to think you're the best because you're going to be wanting to grow. Moving a little bit more back into the art side of things, I know you got your feet wet with art dealing back in your oil painting days. Can you tell me, or can you tell the audience rather, how that story and Very Serious Gallery came to be?
I mean, I've always loved art, although I remember I was on one of these like first Fridays, and it was in Wicker Park in the Flatiron Arts Building, and I was talking to an artist there, who was Lisa Carter. I was just in her studio, I was having a great time. I told her how I really love art and how I just didn't know where to start. And she was like, well, you should take oil painting classes. And she was kind of hooking me, in a way. She teaches oil painting classes. And this was probably, I was maybe in my like 5th year of Google at the time. And I was growing somewhat bored with my job and needing this creative outlet. I was working a very standard operational role. It was very boring, but you know, the fact that it was at Google, I couldn't leave.
Absolutely.
So I started taking oil painting classes, and in doing so, it allowed me to learn more about materials, about process. It allowed me to ask the right questions when I'm meeting with artists. It allowed me to know a little more about what is and isn't possible in terms of creating art. And I took oil painting classes for about a year, and then I realized I was pretty bad at it. I didn't get much joy out of it. I couldn't really paint unsupervised, and this was like photorealism.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not very good at drawing. which is like pretty critical to the art, process. Like if you can draw a hand, you can draw anything.
Absolutely.
And so I was picking up some basic foundations, but what it really did is it cemented my love for the arts and equipped me with some kind of some additional knowledge that I could take into conversations.
Like a first step.
Yeah, when I'm working with artists. And then, there was one of the artists who's actually shown in the other room. He was the first artist I ever started working with. He was, at that time, he was actually living in Lisa Carter's studio.
Oh, wow.
And I remember he was working on a deal with McDonald's at the time. And I just kind of overheard him talking about it. And I started being inquisitive. I asked him questions. He was like, yeah, McDonald's is going to pay me $500 for just like 2 hours worth of work. And I was like, you shouldn't take $500.
Absolutely. It's McDonald's, yeah.
Like, it's like what, let's dig deeper. And so very quickly that deal turned into a $2,500 deal. And that's where I realized, like, okay, maybe I can help here. Because, a lot of artists, they feel as though like the art world is so different than every other world, but in actuality, it's very similar. It's very much the same. So, I know how to read contracts, and I know how to manage deal cycles, and especially all these brand deals.
Yeah.
So I started working on these big brand deals.
While you were still at Google?
Yeah, there was about like 5, like from that point on, I was moonlighting and spending almost all of my free time.
Just doing this art stuff?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so, I had this 9 to 5, and then I had this 5 to 9, but it was also my social life. Like, I loved it. Like, I would go to tons of art shows, I would go to studio visits, I would party with artists, we would go to dinners, and I would buy a lot of art. At this time I was, making pretty good money for a 29-year-old, and, buying, $500 or $600 art was totally possible, and so I started managing large-scale mural projects, is what, and getting these brand deals, because I worked on a lot of big brand deals, at Google, and, I know what they're spending on media campaigns, and I know what they're spending on billboard campaigns, and and this was like, murals are just a line item in one larger campaign. So a $25,000 project, that's big money to an artist. That's small money to a big brand. And I got really good at negotiating these deals and then managing these deals and making these deals bigger. A lot of times I would see a deal, where it's like, this isn't a $2,000 deal. This is a $15,000 deal. And when you can take a deal from $2,000 to $15,000, that's where an art manager and an art dealer can make money.
Absolutely.
And I just enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were, how can I put it, kind of like looking out for the artist in a way?
Oh, totally. There were times where like I would be, where a lot of my like protectorate, like, don't do that. And when you're working with an artist who's like in their first year, especially when they have like the artist mentality. What drives an artist to being, an artist is the freedom of being able to make all their own decisions, not have a boss, be able to do creatively whatever they want. So a lot of times my like, it kind of worked against me, where I was like too aggressive, too protectorate, too like, no, don't take a $2,000 deal, turn down a $2,000 deal. And to an artist who's just starting out,
yeah, it's like, are you crazy? That's $2,000.
I need $2,000.
Absolutely.
Like, I have $40. What are you telling me to turn down a $2,000 deal? So, there are moments that, that like, it becomes challenging, where like, yeah, you do feel as though you're being protected, but that also at the same time, you're trying to push the business for the long term.
Absolutely, you're looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, I love hearing the story as well. Can you talk more about how those deals led into the opening of this space?
Yeah, so this is a very serious gallery. It's a 3-room space in a location that has historically always been a gallery. For the past 30 years, this has always been a gallery. I love this space the moment I saw it because it is already built out to be a gallery. So almost every time when someone takes over a space to turn into a gallery, you would have to put in $50,000 in lighting and walls and storage racks and all of these things. So this was already built out. And the location is a really great location.
Absolutely. I mean, it's right off the blue line.
Totally. But it's close to West Loop.
Yeah.
It's close to River North. And like in terms of square footage, like it would be hard to get this type of footprint somewhere else. So I fell in love with the space, but what really led me into it is when the pandemic happened, we all had to go home. So we were all working from home. I converted my guest room. Like I have it downstairs that's like, it's one of those like, kind of looks like a living room, kind of looks like a bedroom.
Yeah, you can't really tell.
It could be one or the other. It's like bigger than a bedroom, but And then, so at one point in time, that was a bedroom, and then I immediately turned it into my office. Okay, so I was doing my job at Google, and I was doing an average job. At best, I would call it an average job. And I started to realize that there was an opportunity to plan art shows that were catered to a pandemic rather than we're back for a pandemic. So it was like I would utilize. We did art shows in the park. We did art shows in empty storefronts. I remodeled the patio of this ice cream shop literally right next door to my house. I spent $800 remodeling the exterior of it to build a showroom, and every Sunday I threw an art show out there. And I was selling nothing more than $500. It adds up.
Absolutely, especially in the pandemic.
And it gave me a lot of practice. And some of these shows, I had one show that brought in $35,000 in 3 days. And a lot of these other shows were bringing in, I don't know, $5K a weekend, $6K a weekend. And then you pay your artists and you pay the staff that was helping you. But, I would just find all these really unique locations, and people were really looking for something to do. And these were fun. This was interesting. And my friend, she had a condo that was on the market that she was having trouble selling. It was completely empty. Ground floor condo in the heart of Wicker Park.
That sounds like a great
Wicker Park.
opportunity.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity. And I took it over for like 2 months. I threw an art show there every weekend.
Every weekend, man.
Every
How was
weekend.
that?
It like made me realize, well, I had more people come to those shows than I do a standard day here at the gallery, for sure. Like, it was a very interesting situation.
Especially in Wicker Park, yeah, I mean, it's calling everyone's name practically.
Yeah, but it wasn't walk-ups. All these people, like I used, TOC, like a registration management system, which is mainly used for restaurants. And I utilized it for people to, well, one, it elevated me to the level of like a high-end restaurant. And then it was set up as like this experience. It was free. And people would come in. One of the artists I was working with, she was like, we need to take this seriously. And I was like, I am taking this seriously. Like, if you're not noticing, like, this is a very serious gallery. And then it kind of led into that. And I like to add humor into a lot of what I do. I practiced stand-up comedy for a while, and then I was just drinking too much and decided not to do stand-up anymore. And, art kind of came into that, fold right around the same time, real seamlessly. And so I add like this touch of humor, and I talk a lot about how accessibility doesn't mean affordability. And I try to make the art accessible, even if it's not affordable.
Absolutely. Everyone should be able to see it. Yeah.
More than see it, like they should feel comfortable here.
Okay.
You know, like a lot of times you go into a gallery and you just don't feel comfortable. It's sterile, it's cold, it's white walls, you don't know the art. There's an intern who doesn't talk to you. There's 4 pieces of art on the wall. They're $80,000 each. Couldn't buy it even if you can afford it.
Absolutely.
It's like this, you know, and so when choosing the name, I wanted to make something that was cheeky, and I want it to be both thought of as like, oh, is this a joke? Is this humorous? And also at the same time, when they come in here, they're like, oh, okay, wow, this actually is a very serious gallery. Artists are building a career here. They do create a really cool environment that allows me to see new art every single month. And you know, one thing that I always try to do is I try to give patrons the option to not buy. And I think that's a critical part of being accessible. Is, you know, when you have, you know, 3 pieces of art up and it's, you know, outrageously expensive, and, you know, there's something to be lost there. But you know, if you have, you know, crew necks that are $55, and if you're creating hours that are accessible to everyone, then people will feel a little more connected to your gallery.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even when I discovered you, it was never something that was like, man, this gallery is super duper serious, like out of my range. Even when I hadn't came here, I felt comfortable enough to step foot in here and see what everything was about. Like it comes off in prayer.
Yeah, and that's what I want. Like if I get that door to open 5,000 times, I think I'm gonna be successful.
Yeah.
I don't care who walks in. I mean, it's a numbers game. Like I need to meet as many people as possible. I need to be showing really, really great, incredible, beautiful art, and then everything else will fall in place.
Yeah, and the goal is always there, but the journey can be stressful. You know, it can be difficult. What keeps you coming back to art and, you know, really accomplishing those goals?
I can't leave it.
Yeah, I mean, you're
You know,
secondary.
anyone who's in art, anyone who's in music, you can't escape it, even if you wanted to. And so it's not something that like keeps me coming back. Like I literally can't escape.
And why do you say that? Is it just something that has been?
The way you walk down the street, the way you're looking at graffiti, the way your eyes move, you know, I always find myself finding the art in everything. And it's really not something that keeps you coming back. It's just, it is the way in which you live your life.
It's ingrained in your head once you get to it.
You have no other choice.
Yeah. It's like opening Pandora's box.
I mean, Pandora's box has like negative connotations to it, but you know, it's like, you know, the way that a musician's ear works, you can't turn off your ears.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm sure painters, the way that, one thing that happened to me when I started taking oil painting classes, and I would paint people, I didn't realize, when you think like, okay, what color is someone's face? You think in like natural skin tones. You're like, oh, I'm peach, you're brown. You think it like, but in actuality, once you start taking oil paintings, you see the bags under your eyes. You actually see more purples. I see pinks. I see reds. It's not brown, you know. And so you start to see things completely differently once you start to immerse yourself into art. And I'm sure if you talk to musicians, the way they hear things, the way they catch beats, you know, and you hear this when like they break down songs, or like, where'd you get that beat? And like, well, it was, you know, I heard from a crosswalk.
Yeah,
you know, like the little beeper, you know, that helps, you know, people who are visually impaired cross the street. You know, they take that recording and they pull it back and they repeat it, and so it's like you can't really escape.
Yeah, absolutely. And For everyone listening, I mean, it seems when you say you can't really escape, at first it feels negative, but I look at it in a positive way because you're seeing the art and everything. You know, it adds a shade of beauty.
For sure. I mean, even if, like, let's say financially this doesn't work out for me and I have to go back to working a 9 to 5, I'll still have that same eye. I'll still be ingrained within art because there's just no other way for me to see it.
Absolutely. And do you think that helps inform the way that you live your life, not just how you see it?
For sure.
How so?
To be an art dealer requires a different set of listening and compassion and timing, and those skills can be used anywhere. You meet so many people working in the arts. It really deconstructs social classes. So you're meeting people who are at both spectrums of the financial brackets. You're meeting people from all different parts of the city, because the unifying factor is now art, which is
all across the city,
which is everywhere. And it requires a different set of empathy and listening and talking to people. You know, a lot of times when you want to get a deal done, you know, in a different business sense, like in insurance or anything, you gotta push it, you gotta get it done.
Absolutely.
Whereas, like, when it comes into the art world, like, hey, that artist isn't ready. They're not mentally ready. They're not technically ready. Keep an eye on them. What's holding them back? You know, a lot of times there's different factors that hold back a painter, and it's not just talent. So, yeah, I think all these skills could be put into other worlds.
And when looking at, you know, the grand picture at the end of the road, when everything is said and done, what do you hope to leave behind with the Very Serious Gallery?
I want to help artists accomplish major goals, big goals. I don't want to be thought of as a person who sells art, makes money for artists. And I think every artist dreams way bigger than money. And I really try to make everyone that I work with think way bigger than where they're at. And so I think Chicago is a really great city to accomplish incredible things within the art space. And you know what's funny about being in New York, I'll never be bigger than New York. Absolutely. If I open a gallery in New York, I might be successful, but I'll never be bigger than New York.
Yeah.
I think it's possible for someone to be incredibly influential in the city of Chicago. I think that it's possible for this gallery to be a cultural hub for more than just art. And, you know, while we're only in our second year, I think it's very possible that people would look back at this gallery and see some really culturally significant, critically important artists and work that are coming out of this space.
A Very Serious Gallery has very serious ambitions. But with Allan's extensive background in helping the people, those ambitions may very well come true. I, for one, am excited to see how the space develops. If you are, let us know in the comment section. If you want to see more like this, subscribe to join our conversations.